You guys confirm?
Okay, the team is back. Jason, how are you today?
Doing good, sir. Doing good. Thanks for having us back. We're excited to be here today.
All right. No, you were mentioning about this is our third webinar, and we have done like 2 more webinars before, and we've been talking about different topics within Industry 4.0. How has the experience been for you? Because you've been with me for all these webinars.
Yep. I think it's been great. I think that we've had a lot of great interaction during these webinars. I think we'll continue to see that today. Obviously, each one's had a little bit different focus. Today we're really focused on automation within the supply chain and how to harness the power of Industry 4.0 for driving supply chain excellence. So I think we're gonna have an interesting discussion. We've got some great panelists that come from different experiences, different backgrounds today, and we'll introduce them as we get a little bit closer. Yeah, I think it's gonna continue to be real interesting and get a lot of great information out for the folks.
No, sure. I think that I'm really happy to have Govin on this on the panel today, and Alper and Luca, who's been in the supply chain. He's been a guru for supply chain. So we got like the best of the best on the team here. The guy coming from real life application, Luca, Alper, a lot of research experience, so that we can hear from like advanced research. And then Govin, who's been with, was in automotive capital, and then he dished us.
I'm still in automotive, Norman. Hi.
Yeah,
Good afternoon.
you're not in the
everybody.
capital
How are you guys
anymore. You're not in the capital anymore, Govin.
Yeah, it's kind of you can say automotive / tech capital. So that's where I have moved to, because that's the direction we are moving. And
Right.
And kind of this webinar is also going to focus on how to include digital technology in your processes, and it's perfect. This is my first webinar here, and Norman, thanks for excited about it.
All right. Well, we got some people joining here, so I'm gonna go ahead and give the video a start here. And just as a precursor, we just kind of decided to throw this in last minute, but it'll get you thinking about a lot of the different things that we're going to be talking about today. So let's get the video going here. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining today. Back again with Noman and a team of panelists to talk in our third adventure into this webinar series. Today we're going to be talking a lot about harnessing Industry 4.0 and supply chain excellence. My name is Jason Miller from Industry Reply here in Chicago area. Today on the phone and on the video we have Noman from IndustryX, Govind from Neo Motors, who we just saw the great video there. Alper is joining us from Wayne State University to talk a little bit more about the educational and some of the research studies. And then Luca Cortinovis, also from Industry Reply, talking about the technology behind supply chain. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining today. Good to see everybody.
Welcome.
Yeah. All right. So as we get going here, so Noman, as we've done previously, please remind us how IndustryX is involved, what we're doing here, and what we're kind of talking about from a partnership with IndustryX and Industry Reply and Wayne State University.
So IndustryX, as we've been talking about this idea, they were focused on operational excellence and Industry 4.0. When we look at the current landscape and we see that how Industry 4.0 can impact productivity, can impact workforce development, and can impact Detroit metro area and all of the other regions within the US and more. We launched this initiative to create impact, create value, and Industry Reply is a partner with us. We launched this series to work with you, and we're doing more than this. So as we move forward, reach out to us and talk to us about what else we're doing. We welcome everyone, all the panelists today. Thank you.
No, and thank you again, Noman. And as you mentioned, Industry Reply, we're part of the Reply Network here in the United States, and we really focus heavily on bringing the entire supply chain, manufacturing, and customer experience to the table. And we're going to talk about why all those are important. And if you attended during the last webinar, we focused very heavily on the manufacturing IoT side. Today, we're going to focus a little bit more on the supply chain execution and the customer experience side. But we're really going to focus on how these tie together and how technology is helping drive some of these major areas. So without further ado, let's jump into some of the topics today. And I'm going to start with a little bit of an open discussion today. And you know, Noman, I'll start with you. And there's a lot of major driving forces that are driving changes in the supply chain. And we're going to talk about technology today, but it's even something like COVID, right? It's changed the way we think about how we operate. But today, when we focus on technology, you know, from your perspective, you work with a lot of different companies and talk to a lot of different folks. What are some of the major factors that you're seeing that are driving some of the changes in today's supply chain?
You know, so I want to talk about just one thing: value. As what we see right now is the value and the value delivery has totally disrupted. So how companies can create value, how they look at themselves and how they deliver that value, that's where that's a key driving force as we are moving forward. And the impact of supply chain and the digitalization of supply chain, Industry 4.0 within supply chain, can make a huge impact in creating value for the company and the value delivery to the customers. And this is what I like to add, and I want to kick it off with this thought here.
Absolutely, and everybody has a little bit different perspective on value and what the different technology can bring, right? So even from a practitioner standpoint, if I'm out on the front lines, even if I want to make changes within my supply chain, right, there's always a return on investment that has to be considered whenever we think about investments. And Alper, I'm going to come back to you, or I'm going to come to you next. And you've been engaged very heavily with Wayne State University and talking about some of the data-driven pieces, and we'll get into some more detail on that here in a little bit. But from your perspective, as you're thinking about changes in the supply chain and data, especially when it comes to information in the supply chain, how are you seeing the driving forces starting to impact supply chain?
Sure, Jason. This is a fascinating time for all the business and supply chains to be in. From academic perspective, our view of supply chain is all about managing flows and the velocity of how we move the goods and the information within the supply chain. And the changes, these driving forces are affecting both the demand for effective management of those flows and the need for increased velocity. So which is a challenge, but at the same time, the availability of data through new technologies and the supporting technologies such as machine learning, AI, and the hardware that goes with it, autonomous assets, are actually providing opportunities for companies to respond to that increased demand and need for higher velocity. So it is both an opportunity and also a challenge at the same time. And only those companies who will be fast in adopting those technologies within their processes and supply chains will be able to meet that demand and will create value for their customers.
Yeah, there's that term value again. And I think that's going to be a very common theme as we go through a lot of this discussion today. And Luca, I'll come to you next. And, you know, from a system integrator standpoint and a technology thought leader, you know, we experience multiple problems that customers are facing, right? And sometimes it's data, sometimes it's systems, sometimes it's executing orchestration between these systems. What are you seeing from a driving force standpoint that we're seeing across a lot of the customers?
For sure, the first thing that I want to say is the disruption mentioned by Noman before, because this is the way that things are changing. Supply chain never existed with the factories, but before was a continuous flow, a big channel communicating between mass production to the final customer. Now we are in a network of very, very tiny threads that connecting everything, and the integration with the very agile kind of way to work that could be an AGV inside in a factory, or can be an interaction with an autonomous sorter in the factory is moved also versus the customer, where the integration with the process with the customer is different. As Govind can say, the kind of choice also in the automotive is going to selecting single piece that I put in my car, and this thread that connect the car and the final customer is built since the beginning. And the supply chain has to be digitalized enough to follow this thread from the beginning till the end.
No, I think those are good points. And I think another key term that we're talking about is how supply chains have went from, you know, the normal MRP and procurement processes to more of a end-to-end digitalization. And Govind, let's come to you next. And I'm going to transition into the next slide here. But as we talk about some of the key drivers in supply chain digitalization, what are you seeing? What are some of the things that practitioners such as yourself out in the field are thinking about?
Supply chain digitalization is key in the fact that I'll just give you a quick example here. If you look at S&P 500 in 1950s and 1960s, and you had the company's lifespan of about 50, 60, 70 years, so the companies that were in S&P 500. But if you compare the S&P 500 now, the company's lifespan is 20 years. So what has that created? What that's done is it has added an extra challenge, an opportunity for companies that are trying to strive and do the best thing for the customers. So what does it mean is the need for connectedness, and some of the things that Norman, you and Alpert and Luca talked about is providing customer the value, and also it is also providing an interconnectedness between partners, between suppliers, between customers, to have an orchestration of efficiency in process, efficiency in logistics, efficiency in supply chain, which kind of predicts, analyzes, and forecasts, and also helps you get the product the way you want it, in the package that you want it, at the right time, at the right place to the customer. So the need for digitization here, that's why it's so essential, that without it, you will not get to where you need to be, where you need to be in the 21st century and to meet the customer expectations. And that's very, very critical.
No, absolutely. And you know, you mentioned not only, you mentioned something I hadn't even thought about recently, but you know, we've recently been talking with some customers. You talk about packages and package types. cube utilization seems to be a huge thing in the transportation space right now, whether it's inbound or outbound, and having that information, helping companies better use both their inbound and outbound logistics processes. We talk about real-time control of logistics network. It goes beyond track and trace, which we've all been doing for a few years now. It's also about that forecasting, planning, and proper utilization of those routes that you have. So I think those are all really good points. And we're going to transition here a little bit, and we kind of brought up 4 topics earlier, right? And I want to talk a little bit specifically around evolving operating modes, because the way we've interacted with our supply chains in the past has been very traditional, right? Somebody goes to a space in a warehouse, maybe they've got a pick card, something like that, and they pull it. But how we're doing those processes now and how we're executing within supply chains has changed a little bit. And Luca, we'll start with you. I know that we're seeing a lot of things from our customers that are, I'll call it more modern from a supply chain execution standpoint. Talk to us a little bit about how this evolving operating mode has really impacted the supply chain.
That's a very good topic. The automation is working in the industry, in the supply chain since a while, but it was in like the application, like a silos. You have a big warehouse, an automatic warehouse with the possibility to pick in a certain way. Now the interaction is going to be more capillary, like the discussion that we did before about connecting the value between the product and the customer at the end. And also the automation, the interaction with new mode to work inside in the warehouses, inside in the yards, belong the supply chain, are really, really dedicated. Think about the concept of an automated warehouse. Before it was an enormous block. Now is going with a single agent, is an AGV that can go and pick a single part inside in a big construction. And not only pick and move to a picking location, for example, but moving this piece till the sortation area. There is more moving versus the user instead of the user going to pick. And this is one of the kind of, let me say, evolution of the traditional automation, but there are other kind of interaction that we are seeing inside that allows you to have a twin of your supply chain, thanks to the VR or the AR, where you can train user or you can execute complex assembly process directed by an AR visor, or interact with your logistic continuously. In this case, it's more matter of managing the activity inside in a logistic place that can be a compound, a warehouse, whatever, with a continuous connection through what is happening outside. The change of the will of the customer, the issue that you can have in a delivery, or this kind of interaction is continually forcing the need of new way to interact. And for this reason, also the technology behind, not only the final executor like the AGV, but also the technology behind has to be open to interact with different actors, with different players. It's different to, okay, I do a project, 3 years a project, I build my automated warehouse. No, I'm continuous changing my mind. I continuous adapt my way to do the things thanks to new technology and new needs.
Well, I think that those are a couple of really good points there, and having systems that are open and flexible to help accomplish some of these new interactions that we've never had to think about is extremely important. And a lot of times some of our legacy, more monolithic applications like ERP or MRP systems struggle with that type of openness. And Govind, I want to stay on this topic and come back to you for a minute. And you work in the automotive industry and have worked in the automotive industry for years. How have you seen these types of changes be implemented, or currently being in the pipeline to be implemented within the automotive industry specifically?
Thanks, Jason. That's a really good question. I think Luca touched a little bit upon the capabilities of this equipment, but AGVs have been in the industry for the last 20, 25 years. And we have had different capacities, different loads. And primarily when we initially introduced AGVs into our factories in manufacturing automotive, it was just delivering from point A to point B, just doing simple tasks, lifting and putting, and the great thing about AGVs they were great. They never broke down. They never complained, but they were very restrictive on their operations, restrictive on what they could do. They could only travel in certain ways, certain lines, and do certain operations. And you have to be really precise on how you design the pickup and hand-off points for these AGVs. But things have changed now a lot. With the advent of smart technology, autonomous technology, and mapping in the factory or mapping globally, now these have become a smart piece of equipment. They not only interact with your WMS, they not only know exactly what your need is what your supply and demand within a factory is. They also know how to create new paths, and these are AMR, autonomous mobile robot technologies, and they are fascinating in the sense that they can reprogram themselves. They can actually work with your systems to understand the demand, change in demand, where the customer, what needs to be delivered within a factory, whether it's a distribution center or a manufacturing factory. And it can actually do a lot of thinking about you. And also it can deliver precisely, it can report back on what it has done. It can also report back on what is needed and where, and also helps in disseminating the data. Once it has done, the connectivity, and what it has done, what it has delivered, and how the certain things have been achieved. So basically, it ties in very, very seamlessly with all the stuff that you guys have been talking about. Digitization is how this is a critical tool in helping achieve productivity and efficiency in a factory.
So I think there's a couple of major points here, right? So a lot of these evolving operating models are really focused on efficiency and productivity. Some of the topics we're going to talk about today are going to hit the different focus areas, and I think the major message for this changing in operations models really spawns around productivity and efficiency. And as we transition to our next topic, and I'll kind of lead this one off and bring up some points here. It's around how customer interactions have changed and how that's impacting the supply chain. And if I can opine for a second here, if we think about this, 20 years ago, manufacturing was all about mass production, and it was large scale, and everybody was really focused on Lean Six Sigma and driving productivity and efficiency through process redesign. Well, now that disruptor that came in is we're no longer doing mass production. We're doing custom production, lot size 1, lot size 0. These types of things have come about because customers have become more demanding. Not that they're changing the way that, they are changing the way that their needs are being interacted with and how they're communicating with companies. They're also changing the way that they see their orders. I always go back to the Adidas example, right? You can go on the Adidas website and you can order any pair of shoes you want, customized exactly how you want. Literally, you would be producing a lot size of 1. And through all of these different channels, whether it's the normal retail channel, whether it's an e-commerce channel, whether it's some sort of connected application or augmented channel, all of these things are changing the way customers are demanding the products that companies are providing. And if we think about this, Luca, I want to bring you back in for a second. I deal a lot on the customer experience and CRM interaction standpoint, and that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different companies. But whether you're a B2B company, a B2C company, or a hybrid company that's doing both, how you're taking your product to market and how your customers are interacting back with you has been in constant flux. So we're always changing on the front end. How has that impacted you on the back end from a supply chain standpoint in order to make sure that you have the product available, in order to make sure that you kind of can forecast and understand that demand? How is this really changing the backside and the upstream supply chain to help meet that changing customer demand?
The impact is very huge because it's impacting before to have the product and when you have the product. I mean that the interaction with the customer starting at the beginning when you have to plan, because your plan is not done all by your demand that you are thinking that I will produce that size of the number of products that I want to put on the market, but it's more reacting also on the specific user request. And this is impacting the supply chain that has to supply all the goods to your manufacturing plant or any kind of assembly. After that, when the product is ready, the customer is taking, for certain kind of products, is taking control of your process during the production too. They want to know if what is the status. And when it's produced, is starting the old connection between where it's produced to the final delivery. And here we have different way to sell the product, and passing different way There is not more only the retailer or the dealership where you go, but you can interact directly virtually. You can see your product in advance. You can finish the configuration. You can interact with the last piece of your interaction, adding specific components that you missed before, or reviewing the offer that is available at the moment that product is ready. And all the applications that are available now from for the customer allow him also to deliver and to manage deliver till the ending point. That could be at home, could be in a specific place, or whatever it is. This is a very huge change that as a reflection inside in any process, and supply chain obviously is one of the most affected.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this, you know, when we talked about the last topic was really around productivity and efficiency. This is around value add for customers, right? So it's around how are companies striving to change their operating models to meet customer demand and become more valuable to their customers. But it's creating new channels of information, and those channels of information have to feed back upstream in the value chain in order to have the supply chain be reactive. And that dovetails very nicely into our next topic, which is around just-in-time orchestration. And Alper, we're going to talk a little bit about this here in a second with you, but we've always talked about just-in-time, right? And before it was, hey, I'd get my production orders in, and then I'd do my real-time scheduling, and then I'd shoot my POs out to my vendors, and I expected them to deliver today, right? I'd have to meet my cutoff times, but I expect them to deliver just in time. But today, that's to even more of an extreme, right? So not only are we still continuing to drive that just-in-time orchestration from I have a real-time demand and I need to be close to my suppliers, but now we're becoming even more data-driven, and you're in a perfect spot because you see all of these data topics coming in around the supply chain. So, you know, what are you seeing? What information is feeding into the supply chain? And how are we using that information to really impact our operations within the supply chain?
Very good question, Jason, and very important question. I have one word, which is all this streaming data. What it affects in supply chains is the visibility. The visibility is not just knowing your stuff, your processes within your four walls of your company, but also in your extended end-to-end supply chain. And it's not about knowing where my stuff is or knowing the process status or what's going on, but it is more value. It provides more value and opportunities through its being a precursor to generating actionable insights, which you can then use to improve the efficiency and responsiveness of your supply chain. So we have talked about all these new technologies, the big data technologies, the IoT technologies, the analytics. What they are doing is they are increasing the visibility, but more so they are providing the opportunity for companies to make real-time decisions to support their agility and responsiveness requirements. So just to give an example, in the transportation, companies are using the streaming data to be more responsive in terms of what routes they should plan for, how should they allocate their shipment quantities across different modes in real time, how to take advantage of consolidation opportunities which might come up in a moment's notice, and also choose between different vendors as they are providing in real time pricing options. So all this leads to cutting the cost in transportation and logistics services. And another aspect is the use of this data. So we have this real-time data. We need to use it to not just make impromptu decisions, but how could it affect our a little bit longer term planning. For instance, the demand planning in supply chain has been always central to being efficient and responsive at the same time. So the demand planning in supply chain is powered by AI, and this real-time feed of data can allow them to not plan their inventories in a just-in-case basis or carry more than necessary safety stock, but they can actually hold off their decision-making a little bit to a later point in time and run their operations in a leaner manner. So this all ties into the ability to forecast throughout the end-to-end supply chain. So it's not just about us or the company itself, but it's also when I change my demand estimate, how does it affect my supplier's production plan? So this connectivity is critical. So the real-time integration of the end-to-end supply chains is not only a additional requirement or opportunity for companies to take advantage of, but it is also a key enabler to do other things. So I want to bring up the topic of the digital twins. Digital twins have been utilized by a large number of supply chains today. They provide the opportunity to be more agile, more responsive, end-to-end connectivity in their supply chains, but also they provide the solution to their long, ever-existing coordination problems. So when we talk about coordination, we talk about one partner in supply chain making a decision and not considering how it would affect the other partners in the supply chain. So this coordination issue has been a topic in supply chain which hasn't been solved other than one-off applications. But we see this digital twin technology with the support of blockchains and other emergent technologies to be a key enabler. So digital twins are not just to achieve coordination and end-to-end orchestration of supply chain activities, but it also provides a unique edge to companies to do what we call scenario planning. So companies can in real time use their digital twins with much less cost or much less impact to the system to analyze what their decisions, real-time decisions, would have an effect on the supply chain performance, and then choose the best scenario to respond to an event. And an event could be a normal variation event, or it could be a disruption. And as we have seen in the recent COVID situation, and a number of examples before, being responsive and being able to recover from a disruption relies on how well we are able to consume the real-time data and integrate it through the supply chain and have a structure, have a technology such as the control tower or digital twin that can manage it.
No, I think those are some really good points, Alper, and I want to kind of tie it up with this general thought that, you know, digital twins have been around in the manufacturing space for quite a long time, and it's being used for a variety of different things. And your point of digital twins are still fairly new in the supply chain space, but you're absolutely right. Being able to use that information and doing what if scenario planning has proven, for some companies who have already done it, invaluable during stressful times when there's, you know, we'll call it gross changes in demand for whatever reasons. I can only kind of chuckle and laugh and say, can you imagine what this world would look like a little bit different even from a mask standpoint, right? During the recent COVID situation, if masks had been readily available or whatever. So, and everybody will have a different view on that, but being able to do that and have that visibility through various data streams is absolutely invaluable. And as we move into the next topic a little bit, we're going to talk about how kind of tie all this up, right? We've talked about how we're changing the operating modes, how we're interacting with the customers, and how that's impacting the supply chain upstream. We've talked about how the just-in-time models have changed. But what it comes down to is we've still got a lot of classic metrics. And Noman, I'm going to come to you, but we've still got a lot of classic metrics that we measure supply chain effectiveness around. But I think the major difference today is how we're getting the data to help manage these things. So can you talk to us just a little bit about, you know, how this change in dynamic for having more data, how that's changing the complexity and driving the future compatibility of our supply chains?
Well, you know, the biggest change that I'm seeing is the relationship, especially like the traditional companies to their customers. So a lot of the companies have traditionally sold to B2B, but now they are moving into the B2C space very fast. And that's where the change is coming. And this is driven by the customer. And this is why the supply chain is becoming very critical, because how do you satisfy this need from going from B to C? Like Amazon is selling directly to the customer, Tesla is selling directly to the customer, NIO is selling directly to the customers. We're skipping this middle layer, and in this middle layer, like how are we gonna do it, and how supply chain is gonna respond, and that's where that's the big change I'm seeing right now. Now, there will be more changes as we move forward, okay? And this is where the future compatibility is, because the models that were the blockbuster model is totally disrupted by Netflix, okay? The Ford, GM, or the automotive model is disrupted by Tesla. You know, these models, like Uber model, disrupted the taxi industry. Airbnb model disrupted the hotel industry. So when these models are getting disrupted, we need to understand that how we are going to remain relevant. You know, that is the main key. That's where the conversation the companies are having is, how can I stay relevant? How do I avoid the risk of obsolescence? And what we need to do is we need to adopt agility. We need to understand, okay? And the basic principle of innovation and the growth right now is these 4 words, you know: dream big, start small, learn and scale fast, okay? That's the model. And in this model, I think we need to remain agile, we need to remain flexible, and we need to make those decisions like what Alper is saying, what Luca is saying, what Govin is talking about, that this use technology to make quicker decisions. Because what happened to the companies that become obsolete are they were not able to make those quick decisions. So that decision making is key. And that's where I think the essence of this whole change is, those decision making.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And Luca, I'm going to come to you next. And we've got a few use cases that we're going to talk about on the backside of this. But before we get there, you know, as we look at some of these driving forces and specifically in some of these key metrics around obsolescence and measuring agility and speed to market, you know, we work with a variety of customers at Reply, and, you know, we see these types of impacts all the time. And there's a few use cases in my mind, you know, off the top of my head, but talk to us a little bit, just, you know, 2 minutes or so here, about some of the things that you're seeing and some of the positive impacts that we've been able to have on some of our customers in their supply chain.
Yes, one important thing that was mentioned by Roman, the capability to avoid to be old very few times. And to do that, you have not to think big since the beginning. You have to start small to think big. And what we are seeing with some of our customers, that sometimes they are in front of years of systems that are already layered, and no one wants to replace them. And because the cost of doing that, they stay stuck. Yep. The solution is not to replace all of these systems, but to make them work in a different way, adding what is needed to be agile enough and to work. And feeling where the supply chain, for example, specifically, is missing one of the rings that connect the chain to increase. I make an example that we did with a grocery distribution. They had a very good relation with their supplier, but they want to increase the value that they are supplying to their customer. And the missing ring was the capability to really react and manage the incoming food already prepared in a certain way, following the specific that are coming from the request and the demand. We put in place, it's not a complete supplier portal, it's exactly the ring that was missing on cloud to make the supplier capable to prepare and to communicate in real time what it was doing and put the food in the chain to reach the retailer. In this way, no big investment, no change of all the system involved, only a ring to make the supply chain be stronger and resilient. Another point that was related to this kind of activity that was mentioned by Arthur before, the information that we are collecting is huge and make us able to take decisions faster. But in the same time, this kind of information has to be elaborated. And artificial intelligence is helping us to give information. Another example of customers we are working in this moment, predicting the demand based on customer use is one of the drivers to make this more stronger. Avoiding to change continuously what I'm producing, but be ready to do that based on the changes that we are seeing day by day. It's a really good way to keep us in a proper mood, in a proper spinning the wheel without stopping, but continuing the chain, continuing to evolve how we are doing the things. Not replace all, not change it. You can start a project of 10 years to see the result. You have to start something to see something real effective in 3-6 months and work with that. In this way, you can move in your digitalization. Digitalization is here since the computer now, but before was digit something. Now is going to an ecosystem of digital and autonomous also elements. Another example that this is a discussion that started that is also related to one of the questions that I saw on the panel, the sustainability. There are companies, big companies in automotive that are shipping their vehicle to the dealership and they are using rail car, for example. But to fill a rail car, you have to put 24 vehicles on one and you have to buy the full space for you. If you collaborate, if you open your supply chain to the other player, to NIO, to GM, to Ford, to Fiat, to anyone that is working in the area, you can use the same transportation and reduce the impact also on the environment because you combine and you ship a full rail car with multiple brand on it. This is an example that having data, having the flexibility to insource this data and manage them can help you to go faster. And
yeah, I think, Luca, I hate to interrupt you there because we do got to keep moving on a little bit, but I think that's a great point, and that does talk to one of the questions that we saw come in around sustainability, right? Having the ability to maximize, when we do have a carbon footprint, being able to maximize the use of that so that you're not doubling or tripling that carbon footprint down the road. And I think transportation of automotive is a great example, and there's use cases out there. We're not talking about those today, but I do have to move the discussion on a little bit. We do have some discussion, some use cases, so I apologize that we do have to keep moving forward here. But let's talk a little bit about AGVs, and Luca, just maybe 60 seconds from you, and then I want to move to Govind a little bit. Talk to us about how AGVs are starting to help, change the way that we're executing within the supply chain.
Yes, as Govind said before, AGV are on the market since a while, but the A is not more automated, is more autonomous now. I mean that they are taking their decision, they are moving, and this is simplifying a lot the way to introduce them in our work. This is an example of a good work that we did with the company that is distributing parcels. In this way, instead of building conveyors or defining sorter or building structure that are flexible when they are active, the right sort of conveyor. In this way, a tries way. What is the very good point about that? Is really agile. You need more rover because your volume is increasing. It's meant to put them in the network. You don't need to have a specific design space. It's a flat floor where they can drive. and you can reconfigure continuously depending from your demand. You have to open another outbound door. You can easily instruct a new rover, or it's better, the network of the rover, easily and going forward without changing a lot. And the connection is coming directly from the information that we are collecting, is related to the demand. And the parcel itself has its own information. In addition, this rover is also weighing the parcel, is putting the final weight of the parcel before to deliver it, because it has a scale included. But the other things that all the information is coming from the cloud, but there is an edge connection with the rovers in order to have a very fast reaction and change of operation continuously. We are talking about milliseconds instead of normal latency that you can have when you talk about it. This is a very good way to put in place something open, flexible, and fast to be resolved.
Yeah, and Govind, I want to come to you on the AGV topic for just one moment, and then we'll move on to kind of interaction with the supply chain a little bit. But we know that AGV has been around for a while. You mentioned that earlier. But I think companies are finding more ways and newer ways to interact with various type of autonomous vehicles within their operations. And we saw a video at the beginning that showed a lot of the great things that NIO is doing. How are you guys, applying AGVs and AGRs within your environment?
It's a great question. Thank you very much. And Luca, thanks for providing the background there. Actually, previously, like I mentioned, 20, 30 years back, we had AGV going from point A to point B. They were dedicated. So you had to invest certain amount and you had to really fight to get a return ROI on this thing. But now with this autonomous mobile robots that Luca mentioned about, these can be pooled. This can be pooled inside a factory, and these can access the availability of demand of the equipment where it is available. And centrally, because they talk to each other, they not only communicate the information back to the WMS and the factory back, but they also talk to each other and they prioritize the work that they need to be done based on the distance, based on where they are, what their availability is. And plus, on top of it, you have scanners that know exactly what product they are carrying and where they are transporting. And it's awesome. This, what it does, it also helps you improve the theme of productivity and efficiency. It really goes to the next level with these things because these are smarter, they think like humans, and they are performing nonstop, 24/7, and in a connected way, and also providing the real-time granular data back to the factory.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And you mentioned two major points that I want to bring up is that AGVs and AGRs, with the exception of maintenance downtime, they can go, right? You'd often have to have, multiple shifts, multiple people doing that same activity. So AGVs and AGRs are effectively a force multiplier, right? Because they can run for so much longer in an environment. So another thing that's changing a lot, and Luke, I'm going to come back to you real quick, and we've only got about 2 minutes on this topic, but the way we're interacting with supply chain has been constantly changing over the past few years from a human interface, right? How we're executing those tasks and augmented reality, pick to light, mobile devices, all of these things are changing the way that we're executing. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, it's really one of the evolving operating modes that we mentioned. For example, the interaction with new technology that are coming on the market, and sometimes they come and they go, and you have to be really fast to have them and to see the value if there is. An example here is the capability to work with the N3, and at the same time having the possibility to have additional instruction when you are doing something. For example, this is a good example about the customer interaction. You are picking something, let me say clothes with a specific size, specific color, and you have the instructions with what you have to put together because it's part of a kit, a commercial kit that you sell, that you will sell to the customer. And the instructions are supplied to the picker as an augmented information that is available at that time and is complementing what the customer wants completely. It's part of your supply chain to satisfy what the customer wants. How do we have resolved it? Thanks to an open technology that allows to expose API to third-party executor. We integrated easily. It was really a time 30 minutes of making an API talking with another one to allow to show on a screen additional information during the operation. Normal one, go to the location, pick that quantity, plus giving that kind of information to the picker that can help to prepare in advance and to make also efficient the process, avoiding to doing that kind of preparation later. And it was a matter of, thanks to the data, thanks to the API, make that work.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, but I think the major point to take away from this is not only how we're executing within the supply chain is changing, making various systems talk together so that the execution can become easier, right? Whether it's a wearable, a portable scanner, some sort of augmented reality device, Google Glass, the Zebra, even Oculus to some extent nowadays from a VR standpoint. All of these things are changing the way that we are executing within the supply chain. And Alper, I want to come over to you now a little bit, and let's talk a little bit more about just-in-time orchestration, right? And we'll make this the last use case. I do want to get to a little bit of Q&A, but talk to us a little bit about just-in-time orchestration and how this is changing in the healthcare environment as well.
Sure, Jason. So all the four driving forces that we spoke about extensively, they are also affecting the healthcare delivery systems, hospitals, and extended care networks. So the new technologies that we also are familiar in other industries, such as the 3D printing, AI, big data, augmented and virtual reality, they are part of the healthcare system that we are enjoying today. But they do have additional technologies such as telemedicine, which became very prominent in the last 6 months, 8 months. But the biggest challenge affecting healthcare delivery systems due to their nature of the service provision is the variability. The variability in healthcare systems are very hard to anticipate, are very hard to model or capture and control. So the variability is due to the complex patient care needs, and thanks to improvements in healthcare, we are enjoying longer lifespans, but that means that we are becoming more and more sick because we're able to detect and try to treat different conditions in patients. And it's also the variability of the resources, which we don't see a lot in typical industries such as manufacturing or logistics, the resources meaning the care providers. So in this project, what we did is we were approached by a large hospital network in US. And they came to us with, the common problems that other healthcare systems are facing, which is how do they manage their patient flows efficiently to reduce delays and improve access to quality care, and also how do they reduce their costs of providing these services. So we did not approach from a traditional point of view. We acknowledged and we said, okay, in the day of digitization, we do have these technologies and access to data. We studied their technologies and we looked at what data, streaming data and real-time data they are collecting. And we found a number of interesting things. So healthcare systems have been very much in the forefront in being digital than other industries, and primarily due to, I would say, deeper pockets that they can afford, and also due to their insurance claims and reporting requirements. So as a result, the data sources were there for real-time data collection and streaming to support decision-making, but the connectors that required to connect those data streams to one another to get a holistic view of what's going on in the healthcare system was absent. So we identified those connectors, missing pieces, we achieved them, we completed them, and then we went about to build what we referred to earlier, a digital twin of the hospital with a system of systems point of view. So what was this serving was, in a typical hospital, it's not just one type of flow, there are 4 types of flow. So patients are flowing within the hospital, staff or care providers are flowing, There is the workflow, the process flow, and the last one is the equipment flow. So all these flows are interrelated. They create disruptions in one another's workflow. And as a result, we, through the digital team, we were able to understand what are these relationships between different flows. And that brought us a realization of, okay, we can now manage them. So just if I have time, just one example, we did a digital-driven study of their reusable medical equipment inventory, and we found that for hundreds of SKUs, they had 50%, 100% more than what they were using. And then they, by looking at what they can do actually in operational sense, we're able to reduce the reusable medical equipment. So the last project step was we did take the digital team into the next step. So instead of trying to understand what is going on right now and what has been happening and how do they relate to one another, the causal or correlation effects, but we also took it to a more predictive stage. We said, okay, now that we have the digital twin of the hospital, can we say what's going to go wrong in 48 hours in this hospital? Which patients are going to wait? Which surgeries are going to be have to cancel? Which equipment is going to be in demand, but we won't have sufficient of them, etc. So that provides the administrators the capability to reduce their cost basis, the frontline staff to enjoy a more stable working environment, and access to patients is also achieved.
No, thank you very much, Alper. And I think that the healthcare space will continue to grow in demand as the generations continue to roll through and the population gets a little bit older. And we're going to skip the next couple. We were going to talk a little bit about some last mile, but we'll skip ahead. And Govind, I want to come back to you for just about 60 seconds here. So and we're going to talk about this significantly in the next webinar here in 2 weeks. We'll talk about that here in a second. But key considerations when we think about digitalization and the supply chain transformation, what are some of those key considerations?
Thank you, Jason. That's a great question, actually. I think there were fantastic examples, as you saw, case studies, and the concept that we touched upon so far. So all this team really hit upon one thing, that is their customer is central, because we need to be, and the customer I mean to say is, if you have upstream operation, your manufacturing factory is the customer. If a manufacturing factory, then your customer who is buying your product is the central. So you have to have the mindset to understand and support the customer. What kind of how is the customer's experience and how is the customer's ecosystem that you're fulfilling the needs of the customer? How is that what you're offering him is exactly, it's not just cutting edge, it's also things that excite him about your product, and also make sure you have the flexibility to provide him what he wants, not just Model T, black car, like something different, right? And the key thing is to know that you're ready for digitalization within your company. It's very important from the top, is the leading from the front. That means the senior management have to have a full buy-in into this process of digitalization, because they need to understand that, hey, what is this going to get me from now, and how to keep ourselves not just relevant, but on the cutting edge of things. For that, you need to know what their end game is, what you need to know, how this digital technology is going to help me disrupt ourselves, because disruption is profound, and because that provides the customers with what they need, that provides them with new processes, new technology, new product, that also helps the companies back to stay relevant. That's very important. And the key thing is change from within, right? As a company, you need to take risk. You need to be, and when I say risk, it's calculated risk. Like we always say in our startup industries, right? Fail and fail fast. You will fail, but you cannot be too conservative about it. You have to know what's in the market, what's going on. You have to also have quick strategies and quick involvement with your technology partners to see what is going to give me the biggest bang for the buck, and change as needed, but that's very, very important, right? And I already talked about the customer, I talked about the pain points. And then if you have all these boxes checked, you are ready for a technology development, and you are ready to manage and improve on that technology to keep you relevant, not just keep you relevant, also lead from the front and be on the cutting edge of the technology.
No, and Govind, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And folks, we have put so much information out there today. found myself having a hard time to even breathe, thinking about everything that was going on today. But you know what? That's okay. We ran out of time today, but we want to talk about a couple things. As a reminder, we've got one more webinar coming up in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about the next steps. We're going to talk about all this information that you've got out there. What is that transformation roadmap look like? And Noman, I know that we've got to kind of set all the talking points for that, but I know we're going to hit on self-evaluation. We're going to hit on road mapping. We're going to hit on use cases, quick wins. We're going to talk about all those things in the next webinar. So please follow our threads, check it out. In 2 weeks from today, we're going to be back talking about developing that roadmap and how to start on the journey. In the meantime, if you have questions, send them in, post them on our LinkedIn pages, post them on the board today. We'll get them answered. We'll get them back to you. Additionally, if there's additional information you need about today's topic or any other topics, you can reach out to IndustryX at industryx.org. You can reach out to Industry Reply. Got some links here. There will be replays of today's broadcast up on Facebook. We'll make sure that those links are out there. Please, everybody, stay safe. Enjoy the rest of the week and the weekend. And in the meantime, fair winds, following seas, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. Let's start this journey. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for our panelists today.
Thank you very much.
Jason.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Noman. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.